Chapter 101. The unusual cold winter has passed. After the rainy season, the warm weather of early spring, which heralded flowers, began in earnest. Not long ago, my 12th birthday has passed. Today, Clarivan was visiting my house for a meeting under the disguise of a class. I think we need to increase the grain sales we have for the time being. Spring harvest will begin in the east next month. Go ahead, Clarivan. Yes, I'll present a final report on Eastern food sales soon. As expected, Clarivan is an excellent worker. Even if I don't tell him what to do, he handles everything neatly and easily. Sometimes I feel sorry that I don't do too much. I want to be of some help too. Suddenly, I thought of what Violet had said in our conversation not long ago, so I asked, just in case. Grandfather Crowley says that he's cutting back on his workload because of arthritis. Yes, that's why I've decided to bring two more of Crowley's disciples to the Imperial City and set up a workshop for them. The location is a luxury housing district near a jewelry store. Of course, he had already taken all the necessary steps. All I can do is, Astera ointment works well for arthritis pain. I'll get you some of it. He only agreed to my words. I didn't think that far enough. As expected, Lady Florentia has a kind heart. Clarivan was moved and admired me a little more. How's Bate doing these days? Bate signed a contract with us as a kind of partner. We made a contract to sponsor some of the building and management costs and for him to provide us with some of the good information that is collected at Caramel Avenue. He doesn't have to pay the rent, so I think he's gotten a lot of room to breathe. The dessert shop staff he hired last time is all used to their work now, and they like that they can now focus only on information gathering. Oh, I thought the quality of the information he was sending suddenly improved. That's what it's all about. It was a good thing. From now on, Bate and Caramel Avenue will grow by leaps and bounds. I'm so glad that I called Tibbs on advance. Now I'm relieved, and I have one more thing to discuss. Gariban handed me a thick stack of papers and said, "There's too much money in Palette's company that's playing around. Investing in Galleon clothing store is no longer considered efficient. I can't believe I have a lot of money to play with. Was I that rich? Give me some money, Tia." In fact, I've been busy opening new businesses, but I've never checked exactly how much I've earned. Was I rich enough to say that, Clarivan? To my question, Clarivan nodded and answered succinctly. Including the profits from this Eastern trade deal, the Palette company has already become one of the Empire's top 5. Already, diamond mines in the East. We've been focusing on businesses with high returns. Not only that, but we also have a stake on Gallihan Clothing Store and Lombardi's. As Lady Florentia has pointed out, investments in real estate are very expensive. Wow, I didn't expect it to be that much. As I stood there amazed, Clarivan tilted his head and said, "It's all the work of Lady Florentia." Well, it is, but you're right, haha. You really are amazing. It was a word full of pure goodwill and respect for me. To me, it's an honor to have Lady Florentia by my side. Clarivan bowed his head slightly and said, "I was a little shy to hear this compliment right in front of me, but I was still prouder. It feels like we're in a stable zone. I feel a little relieved, so I think I have to deal with what I've been determined to do for the time being. Well, I'm going to have to get ready for my debut soon." However, an unexpected reaction erupted from Clarivan, who was quenching his thirst. Cling. The glass he was holding fell to the floor and broke. Clarivan's wide eyes were stuck on me and couldn't move. "But the debut that I know." "Yes, that. Is there another kind?" After a while, Clarivan, dazed like a man who received a big shock, went somewhere. I was spending time before dinner, reading a book, and suddenly I heard footsteps approaching urgently, so I raised my head. "Tia!" Boom! With a loud noise, the door opened and my father ran in with a pale face. "What's wrong, Dad? I don't know where he came from." Barely breathing, my father said in a trembling voice, I just heard a strange thing from Mr. Clarivan." "Something strange?" "Tia is preparing her debut." "Why is that strange thing to say?" "Yes, that's right." Huh. My father shut his mouth like he heard the worst news in the world, and the tail of his eyes drooped, brown and moistened. "You're still young. Already? We're going to have a debut between 12 and 15 years old. I can't wait to finish what I'm going to do eventually. But a quick debut is something like what the small aristocratic families do, who has to hurry up and decide where to get married. Tia doesn't need to hurry, right?" My father spoke earnestly as if to persuade me. "That's true. It was just when I was about to explain why I was going to do my debut." Boom! The door opened with a much louder sound than my father's. "Tia!" This time it was grandfather. Like father, my grandfather rushed in with big strides and asked, "What do you mean, debutante? You have come, Grandpa." I got up from my seat and walked in front of my grandfather. He hugged me tightly but asked me again, "Did I mishear it, right?" "No, I think you heard it right. I'm trying to prepare for my debut." Huh, his reaction is similar to my father's. "Why are you in such a hurry? You should take your time with those kinds of things." But it's a gateway for any noble woman to go through someday. Debutante is a kind of initiation-like procedure where you officially show your face to the existing social world and introduce oneself as if saying, "Please take care of me in the future." It wasn't such an essential gateway either. In my previous life, I lived without being a debutante, but if possible, it's better to do it, and it's easier to make your face known at once, so I'm going to do it as early as possible. "Is there a reason why you want me to do the debut later?" I asked just in case that My grandfather coughed uncomfortably, then pouted, and instead, my father replied in a slightly tearful voice, "Your dad feels sorry and proud that you've done well, all on your own. I feel like you'll be growing up too fast after the debut," I asked as I looked back at my grandfather. "Is that why for grandpa too?" "Well, it isn't a good thing to step into a noisy and talkative society early." "Yes, Tia, even if you don't grow up in such a hurry as your grandfather said," I replied with a big smile. "It's going to be this season, my debut." "Tia!" Grandfather and father shouted at the same time, but I shook my head firmly. Maybe it's because I don't go to events outside, but there are a lot of people who don't know me. Sometimes I get ignored. I deliberately spoke in a weak voice and saw something spark in Grandpa's eyes. Who dares ignore my granddaughter? If that had happened, you should have told Dad." My father rarely spoke up. I kept drooping my shoulders and said, "If I make a debut and more people know my face, that won't happen. That's why I want to do it soon." I could see my father and grandfather trembling. For that reason, debut is a good solution. As expected, I thought I could say it like that. Father and grandfather began to think seriously, even wrinkling their brows. It was my grandfather who was persuaded first. "Yes, this grandfather will give you the biggest banquet so that you can make a proper debut." "Yay, as expected of grandpa." I hugged my grandfather tightly around his neck. "Ho ho," grandpa smiled and patted me on the back. It was then. Another boom was heard when the door opened with a loud noise with the twins storming in. "Tia, what debut?" "Not yet." "Ha, I don't have the power to explain it again." I looked at the twins with a small sigh and asked my grandfather and father, "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Eventually, even Shannonette joined and sat around the table. Shannonette was surprised for a moment to hear the news of my debut, but didn't make a fuss like everyone else, ignoring Lulak's granddaughter, such ill-natured beings. Grandfather kept grumbling as if he was still angry. "What? Who ignored Tia? That's why you're going to do a debut?" The twins were also indignant as they slammed down the table, although they immediately went quiet after receiving a glare from Shannonette, who was eating quietly beside me. I laughed and talked to try and patch things up. It wasn't such a big deal. Last time I went to the stable outside. "Oh, that guy back then? You mean the guy who was condescending to Tia, right? What was the name again?" "Hey, no, don't tell them. Case and Janice." Grandfather's eyebrows wriggled once at what Gilly asked, and Myron answered, "How dare the Anjanus ignore my granddaughter? And he even flirted with you." Oh my, how troublesome. The name Anjanus further increased grandfather's fighting power. "I can't do this, that bastards. We will have the grandest debut ever so that no one would dare do such a thing to my granddaughter." Shannonette, who then patted her mouth with a napkin, said in a quiet voice, "The most honorable debut is the debutante ball hosted by the Imperial Court." "The Imperial Debutante Ball?" "Yes, once a year, only those invited on a strict basis can enter society there." End of chapter 100. Chapter 102. "Well, I think I've heard of it." Shannonette nodded at what her father said. Seeing him sighing quietly, Gallihan seems to know about it. The Imperial Debutante Ball is definitely different from other debuts. In addition to the fact that the host is the Imperial family, the number of people who can participate is limited to less than 10, and the participants are invited by the royal family strictly, not first come, first served basis. "Yes, Shannonette, you made your debut there." As grandfather spoke, Shannonette's face turned slightly red. "But as I said a while ago, it's a debut that is as demanding as it is. If you want Tia to make a most spectacular and high-profile debut, there's no better chance than an Imperial Ball. As for advice from someone who dominated the high society, it will be extremely beneficial to debut there." And Shannonette is right. In the Empire, there are several debutante balls hosted by noble ladies who are one place in society. But the highest pick was the Imperial Debutante Ball, no matter what anyone said. Girls who officially debuted in society, there are in different starting lines from others. The method of selection was different. That year, anyone who wanted to participate in the Imperial Debutante Ball had to write a letter with their own introduction and send it to the organizer. There was nothing else that people and families who wanted to participate could do. Just wait to be chosen. Girls from high-ranking noble families were often chosen, but not always. Sometimes it was selected because of their pretty heart in the letter, or because it was a family that was not very powerful but had a long history. The number of participants also varies from time to time. Sometimes it was a full 10 people, and if there were no sufficient applicants, they would not hold a debutante ball at all. Under the circumstances, everyone is paying keen attention to whom makes their debut at the Imperial Ball every year. It's a perfect debut for Tia. It should be that much, yes. Grandfather said with a satisfied smile. "I've never seen an Imperial Debutante Ball before. I definitely go on Tia's debut day." The twins also drank a lot of kimchi soup. "Well, it's not Korean Kingdom, but I don't know. The Hangul text is kimchi." Well, I don't want to dampen their spirits, but someone had to tell them the reality. I don't think everyone knows. I got their attention and everyone around the table looked at me. "The Imperial Debutante Ball is in the next 2 months, right? Then wouldn't the application be closed a long time ago? Since I'm doing it, I want to properly brand my face to everyone at my debut. This year's contestants haven't been announced yet, but it's probably too late. And even if there's still a deadline, I can't guarantee that I'll be chosen. But their reactions are unexpected. Everyone just stared at me without saying a word. "Why are you all looking at me like that? You might be chosen," Gillia said, tilting his head. "That's right, it will work," Mayron replied, "because it's Tia." "What?" I was expecting a proper reason from the twins. "Maybe it will." Wouldn't they accept it? Even my grandfather and father joined. I looked at Shannonette as if saying, please explain to these people. If you write and send a letter saying you want to participate. No, not even Shannonette. However, even Shannonette's ears are fluttering a little. Really? Then Shannonette replied with a small smile. Because you're a Lombardi. Oh, right. Slightly dazed by such a simple and clear answer, Shannonette gently explained to me. On the imperial side, Lombardi's little girl's pride would be hurt if she made her debut elsewhere. Don't worry and send a letter. I somehow trust whatever Shannonette says. I nodded with a little doubt, though. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I shouldn't have sent it. I shouldn't have. Oh, I'm embarrassed. It has been 2 weeks since I sent a letter to the organizer of the Imperial Debutante Ball, but there has been no contact from them. I trusted Shannonette and wrote every word with all my heart. Don't be too disappointed. Just wait a little longer. L'Oreal comforted me, sprawling on the table in shame. No, I think it's already wrong. But that's too much. Have they read it? Have they? I'm miserable. As I was soaking my tears on the table, I heard a knock on the door. Miss Florentia. It's the butler. Come in. The butler of the annex, who opened the door carefully, bowed politely once and said, sticking out what was in his hand, a letter from the palace to Miss Florentia. Hurry up. I ran quickly in front of him and received the letter. The envelope containing the letter was not gold used by the emperor, nor purple used by the empress, or pink used by Paris. It was my first time seeing a neat brown envelope. On the back, it said, Lady Florentia Lombardi, in very nice handwriting. I carefully opened the envelope and took out the paper inside. We invite Lady Florentia Lombardi to the Imperial Debutante Ball. The first meeting of the participants will be held at the same time as below. Please be in attendance. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In front of Pura Palace, Lombardi's carriage stopped, and it was not Florentia Lombardi, the playmate of the second prince. Caitlin, who was waiting, bowed politely and greeted him. Here you are, my lord. Well, how are you? Lulak Lombardi tapped Caitlin on the shoulder a couple of times and said, His Highness the Second Prince is waiting in the drawing room. Please come this way. Lulak obediently followed her into the palace. Then suddenly he asked a question into Caitlin. Is it worth cleaning up after that child? Sometimes I only wish that the Second Prince was a little more childish. Well, that was his personality, but if you're tired of this, come to Lombardi anytime. I'll always leave your seat empty. Thank you, my lord. After a short conversation, the two entered the drawing room. Long time no see. At Lulak's words, Paris only briefly saluted. Caitlin was on her way back to report Paris' latest condition. Therefore, she knew how many servants of the Empress had been in and out of the palace, as if to hurry and kick him out to the academy. The Empress urged Paris to take his own steps or write an application for admission to the academy every day. In the meantime, Paris has also kept out the pressure well, and Caitlin was used to it and just ignored and pretended not to hear. That's why Lulak, the prince's guardian, asked for his intervention. While watching Paris disapprovingly, Lulak immediately brought up the subject. Why do you insist on not going to the academy? Paris' dark eyebrows wriggled once at the word academy. Lulak, who was trying to tell whether he still couldn't fix his habit of keeping his mouth shut like a clam, looked more unhappy with the low voice that came out. I don't want to go. If it were his grandson, he'd beat him up. If you beat the prince in the imperial palace, you will be bothered to clean up the mess. What's the reason? Perez looked up at Lulak's question. Then he answered, looking directly at Lulak with red eyes. I will not be pushed out of this palace. It came out quite strongly, but the words that came back were cynical. If you don't want to be pushed away, is that the best you can do? At least the Empress does not achieve what you want. That's not the answer to my question. Perez shut up like a habit again, but the red-blooded eyes were no different than they were when he was a child, and Lulak clicked his tongue. He wanted to use Empress Rubini as a tool to thoroughly offend him, but he thought otherwise. Maybe it was because his beloved granddaughter complimented him every time she had a chance, saying, he's my best friend. Lulak opened his mouth, thinking this was the first and last time he gave advice. Do you think you can stay in the palace and fight the Empress and then Janus? There's nothing you can do. That dream is so ambitious. Lulak did not hide his dream. You can disturb them and harass them. You could be the troublesome stone that bothers them every step of the way to sit on the throne. But a mere stone won't stop Astana from sitting on the throne. Don't you want revenge? Instead of answering, Paris' red eyes blazed like a sword on fire. Then take away what they want most. That's revenge. Lulak rose from his seat, leaving only that word. Paris, who was left alone, also did not see him off, but sat idly in the spacious drawing room, deep in thought. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The first gathering of the participants in the royal debutante was held in the small banquet hall of the royal palace. 7 girls had already arrived at the palace where tea parties were usually held, except for me. They seemed surprised when I showed up to see as if they already knew who was participating in the royal debut party. But they didn't dare approach me and kept themselves company. At the sight of it, my desire to go first and say hello disappeared, so I settled on the other side of the round table. I could feel the red-haired lady sitting alone near my seat looking at me. But before our conversation could start, a group of people entered the banquet hall, and the gray-haired old lady, who was leading the way, looked back at us and said, We're all here. She was a small old woman with a bent back and skinny waist, but no one in the palace can ignore her. Even Empress Rubini kept her temper in front of this woman. This old woman is Fonta Impiga, the head of the palace. Feel free to call me Fonta. For 40 years since the reign of the late emperor, she has been the head of the imperial palace and organized the imperial debutante ball of aristocrats. Even the royal palace ladies in waiting hall was all managed by Fonta Impiga, and her eyes immediately turned to me. End of chapter 102. Chapter 103. It wasn't a cold or sharp look, but it was a look that somehow made one nervous. I've never experienced this in my previous life, but the longer I hold power in high places, the more I like a bold person without being arrogant. I didn't shy away from the eyes of Mrs. Impigra and looked at her face. Then for a moment I could see a flash of interest in her eyes. I'm just a humble old woman, but I'm teaching you young ladies preparing for their debut. So I look forward to your kind cooperation. It was an infinitely polite and humble remark, but Fonta's eyes never were. Even in that short moment I could feel myself looking through the faces of the contestants. For the successful social debut of the young ladies, remember to follow imperial manners like on the day you became a debutant. Then a girl surrounded by other young children by the window took a step forward. She was an impressively teenage girl with glossy blonde hair and deep brown eyes. I've heard a lot about you, Madame Fonta. It was a calm and confident voice. Apparently, it seemed the sort of thing that was used to getting people's attention. I am my Caporia. Lady Caporia, who spoke her name, bowed gracefully on the spot. It was an impeccable noble greeting. At the moment, Mrs. Impigra frowned slightly with a hint of dissatisfaction. For Fonta, did she do something wrong? Lady Caporia called Impigra in bewilderment, but there was no answer. It seemed that she did not intend to give the answer easily on what was wrong. Instead, she glanced at the ladies, which is giving them a chance, but, of course, no one came forward because Lady Caporia, who was serving as the leader of the group, was humiliated, so everyone hesitated, and the eyes of Mrs. Impigra came back to me. It didn't seem to have much expectation. Maybe it's because she thinks I'll stay still like everyone else. I put my right hand near my heart, grabbed the hem of the dress with my left hand, and bent my right leg back slightly. I didn't forget to bow gracefully. A few years ago, when I went to the dinner of the Empress, it was a courtesy greeting of the Imperial Court, taught by Shannonette. As Impigra said a moment ago, from this moment on, remember to follow Imperial etiquette, like on the day of you becoming a debutant. Oh, as if she had finally found what she wanted, Impigra smiled. What is the lady's name? Florentia Lombardi, Ma'am Impigra. In fact, there is no problem with calling her Fonta, as Lady Caporia did. However, I just wanted to express my respect for the elderly who had maintained the position of lady-in-waiting for more than 40 years. I've been in charge of big and small houses in Lombardy for a while, so I know how hard it is. You're Lombardy's young lady. Madame Impigra smiled satisfactorily. It was a perfect imperial etiquette. Do the Lombardis learn imperial etiquette separately? No, I had to go to the palace the other day, so I learned from my aunt. If it is your aunt, Mrs. Shannonette. When Shannonette's name came out, Madame Impigra's complexion brightened up. She's definitely one of the greatest young minds produced by the Imperial Debutant Ball. You have a very good teacher, young Lombardi. Thank you, I said one more time, slightly bending my knee. Impigra once again looked at me with a satisfied face and told the young children gathered at the banquet hall, "You've been chosen to enter society at the Imperial Debutant Ball, the best debut of the Empire. This is a very honorable thing to do." The voice of Impigra lowered. The reputation of the Imperial Debutant Ball comes from strict screening standards and perfect banquets that do not tolerate a single mistake. So you're going to get together here twice a week to get to the ball and learn a lot. Twice a week. I knew it was hard, but sighs flowed from here and there. As if she was used to such a reaction, Madame Impigra smiled faintly again. We can't afford to neglect it because it's our first official social appearance in the great Lumbru Empire. With a solemn voice, she says, "I'm starting to think I'm in the wrong place. But at the end of the day, the most important purpose of the society is not to show off your excellence. It is in harmony, exchange, and learn from each other among the imperial nobles. So the most important thing is to start well." It was a rather straightforward, yet canonical view of the royal palace. Today is the first day, so I'll take some time for you to get to know each other with light refreshments. We'll bring tea and food, so please wait here for a moment. Impigra and the imperial palace maid behind her escaped from the banquet hall in a stampede. Only the young ladies who will participate in the debut are left. Suddenly there was a cold and strange silence in the banquet hall. Then I casually turned to the window and faced a wary look at me. Oh, this is my first time. To be honest with you, I've been used to people who treat me favorably. Most Lombardy people did, and so did Clarivan and others who worked together. Even at the few banquets I had attended, the nobles were impatient to talk to me. That's why she's staring at me and keeping me in check. It's fresh. This is what social life is all about. I was a little excited to see a social aspect that I had never experienced in my previous life. Then a small voice talked to me from the side. Well, young Lady Lombardi. Just call me Lady. Oh yes, Lady Lombardi. The girl who looked unusually weak was impressed with her red hair and light freckles on the bridge of her nose. I'm Tiliana Gitterwall from the east. Gitterwall. While I was distracted by the family name, which reminds me of some related information, Tiliana asked me with a flushed face, "If you don't mind, could you teach me how to say hello to the Imperial Court a little while ago? It's not a very difficult request. I thought Madame Impigra would teach you all that later." I'm sure that's the case. I thought Lombardi's greeting was elegant and beautiful. That is probably the effect of Shannonette. Even if it's the same greeting, the mode of and shape are slightly different depending on the person. If you don't mind, please. Tiliana clenched her fists as if she were hesitant and courageous. In my debut, the whole family decided to come all the way from the east to the Imperial Palace. I wanted to show them a good side of me. It was not a plausible excuse. It seemed sincere. I don't think I'm the type to say the right thing in the first place. Well, I'll buy you something delicious. Yes, of course. I never fell for the word of buying you something delicious. I was just trying to teach you, really. While I was walking with Tiljana a few words, the crowd by the window over there came near me. Lady Lombardi. It was Maivy Kuporia, who just stepped up to greet the headmaid in Bigra. The Kaporia family was a member of the aristocracy and was one of the emperor's oldest noble families. And recently, Mrs. Kaporia began to serve as a confidant of Empress Rubini, a powerful member of the social circle. Don't bother yourself there. Come over here and talk to us. Weren't you wary of me a little while ago? The window is warm with good sunlight. Maivy Kaporia was completely excluding Tiliana from the conversation without even looking at her. Sneaking a glance at Tiliana, he was smiling awkwardly and staring at nothing but the table, pretending to be fine, but she really can't be. I said with a smile to Lady Maivy Kaporia. I'm fine. What? Lady Kaporia looked genuinely bewildered. She seemed to think that I would get up right away and join them. I'm not that naive, no matter how much I've never experienced social life. Even if I abandoned Tiliana here and joined the group, there's no way that those ladies who are already close to each other since childhood can fit me in properly. I've got a cold. I think we'd better sit here. Though there's no way I'd catch a cold. Sterol makes a lot of health supplements. However, masking your words in this way is a favorite method of conversations for nobles, just like Lady Kaporia used sunshine something a while ago. Well, I hope it's not a big illness. Lady Kaporia's face, which seems to say, for a week or so. I hope so. I hope you whine with fever and ruin everything. But I replied with a smile as if I hadn't noticed. Thank you for your concern, Lady Katarina. Lady Kaporia's smiling mouth twitched when I called her name wrong on purpose. Sweetheart, you still have a long way to go to beat your sister. I said it was my first time in society, not my first time at 12. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Caitlin approached Perez, who was reading in the parlor, and informed him, Your Highness, we have a visitor. I told you for the time being that no guests will be accepted at Poirak Palace. Perez's voice, which had been loud by people sent with the Empress for a while, was cold. Please allow them in, Your Highness. Perez took his eyes off the book and looked at Caitlin as she was saying something that wasn't like her. Who's the guest? It is Fonta Impica, the head maid of the Imperial Palace. Now Perez knew at least who served the Empress and who served the Emperor. Among them, Fonta Impigra was one of the people who were at odds with the Empress. Tell them to come in. A moment later, Fonta Impigra with a cane approached and greeted politely, and she just looked at Perez for a while without saying a word, as if thinking of someone she dearly missed. And at some point, Madame Impigra said determinedly, I dare to make a proposal to His Highness the Second Prince. End of chapter 103. Chapter 104. Perfect, Lady Lombardi, it's perfect. Madame Impigra nodded very satisfactorily and praised me. Clap, clap, clap. Then the ladies of the royal palace, who were standing behind the podium, clapped their hands in silence. Maivy Kaporia, killing gaze, stares at me. Wow, Miss Florentia, you're amazing. Tiliana praises me with her sparkling eyes. She's like Rainy. This has been repeated every debutant practice day. I'm tired of compliments. Hoot. But of course, I won't lose my humility. I'm flattered. It's because Madame Impigra taught me well. She really did. I was surprisingly cut out for society. I was nervous because I heard a lot of terrible rumors about society, such as the battleground without a knife and where today's winner is tomorrow's loser. My sword was sharper than I thought, and I was not a man falling off a cliff, but a man who overcame it. I don't know if I can be this happy after winning against young girls who are only 10 years old. It's okay, Tia. You're 12 years old too. Not to mention your souls. Anyway, I had my eyes firmly stumped on Impigra. All right, it's going according to plan. Can you teach me the secret? Tiliana asked me. I thought you'd be good at anything. How can you speak so perfectly? Debutant practice is divided into morning and afternoon, and this morning's lesson was about speech. Since they were all born and raised in noble families, they could use basic aristocratic conversation methods, but they took more reinforcement classes for their debutant and future social life. However, Tiliana was particularly having difficulties. Nobody in the East uses this phrase. It's so frustrating to beat around the bush like this. It was far from the center of the empire, and the seaside people had a strong Eastern culture. If you don't want to dance anymore, why don't you just say it's hard? I don't know why I have to make an excuse about shoes or makeup. Tiliana shook her head as if she couldn't understand. This will make you the rudest young girl in the history of the imperial debutant. Tiliana murmured gloomily. That will be considered disrespectful. The most important thing is to keep smiling. Is that so? It was when Tiliana laughed vaguely. I envy Lady Guitermel for not having to go through the trouble of learning how to speak. It was Lady Campadel, the leader of Miss Caporia's lackeys, who walked towards us and talked. I heard that she was 14 years old this year, but she was particularly tall. It's not hard to believe that she is already an adult. You don't have to say no to flowers on the wall. Woohoo! Caporia and her lackeys often teased and ignored Tiliana, saying she was from an eastern rural family that she had never heard of. Tiliana was very intimidated because they laughed at the way she spoke, and her culture is a little different from the Central Empire, saying it was because she was a town idiot. Even now, Tiliana's big, frightened eyes turned to me. Try it out. I winked at her. Keep smiling. I thought you a while ago. Tiliana, who nodded while swallowing her saliva, rolled up the corners of her mouth and smiled, and looked at Lady Campadal. What? Why? Why are you smiling? Lady Campadal was stunned, and Tiliana, who was timidly intimidated every day, suddenly smiled. There's no point in putting on a brave face. Who would want to dance with a low-ranking Eastern aristocrat that no one knows? Despite the repeated verbal bombardment, Tiliana clenched her teeth and held on smiling. Lady Campadal's eyes shook and soon mumbled, frowning, Gee, I'm really offended. You feel worse. I stared at Campadal's young girl from behind, but Tiliana was delighted. Lady Campadal picked a fight, and it's the first time I've done it without crying, as expected of Florentia. You've taught me a great secret. Tiliana, who is delighted by the small things, reminds me of Perez, whose eyes always sparkle after having chocolate cookie. If we finish practice early today, shall I go see Perez since I'm in the palace? Soon the break was over, and the afternoon class began. Both tables and chairs in the banquet hall were emptied, and large spaces were prepared. I'd like to talk about the procedure of the Imperial Debutante Ball, Mrs. Impigra said, looking back at the young children standing. When the ball starts, the young ladies will be called in one by one. The ladies' brief personal information is introduced. Of course, your cavalier will escort you. The ladies, who were quietly listening to the words cavalier and partner, steered. After that, it's the most important step in the debutante ball. The group dance that the participants do with cavalier is the highlight of the debutante. Impigra explained in a calm voice, but not all 8 couples start dancing at once. A pair selected by my organizers, including myself, will begin the dance first. Of course, you'll get everyone's attention at the banquet, so you'll be chosen as the best and most beautiful pair. Only one pair with everyone's attention. How nice it would be to make a social debut like that. The lady's eyes glistened with ambition. When that pair's dance is over, the rest of you will naturally join in and dance together. Well then, as soon as Impigra was finished, Lady Campadal raised her hand and asked, How do I get my cavalier? Am I supposed to ask a man to be a cavalier himself? At the moment, I could hear people breathing in a small hum as they were nervous. I was worried again, as I always was. I'm sure the twins are going to be my cavalier, but what if they fight? No, they'll fight no matter what. As worries deepened, Madame Impigra said something unexpectedly. No, the cavaliers were chosen by our organizers as the right people for young ladies, considering their age, orientation, and family. Sigh, that's a relief. I was surprised if I had to ask them myself. Everyone breathed a sigh and relief and swept their hearts. By the way, hold on. You've already chosen the cavaliers. Sure enough, Mrs. Impigra signaled to the closed door. Come on in. 8 men lined up as it opened wide. They were all young faces who had not come of age, and in front of it, Perez was there. Perez, whose eyes met me immediately, smiled, almost invisible, and stood side by side with other cavaliers behind Impigra. Why are you coming out of there? He wasn't the only one who was surprised. The young ladies who stood gracefully while keeping etiquette were all in frenzy. Honestly, Your Highness the Second Prince? Oh my God! Like the surprise to my Vicaporia, the same was true for the Empress people. Wow, what do I do? There was also a child who covered her red face. The reaction is stronger than I thought. I asked Tiliana, who was staring blankly at Paris from the side. Excuse me, Tiliana, is the second prince very popular among the young women? I was really asking because I don't know. Yes, wow, it's my first time seeing him in person today. The rumors were not giving him justice, Tiliana said, still keeping her eyes on Perez. I recently came to the capital for my debut, and the first thing I heard was about His Highness the Second Prince. What are they talking about? Well, I mean, they say he is beautiful as a sculpture. Right, he has a mysterious yet enticing atmosphere. That's right too. He's cold and aloof, but he's also attractive. I think all the rumors come down to one thing, but it's true. Perez's appearance was blooming more and more spectacular, enough to make anyone fall for it. The face, which did not change much, was not a flaw, but rather a cold charm. A well-developed body through constant swordsmanship training is an advancement that can't even be compared to Peter's. Contrary to his tall height, his delicate, smooth, and chiseled face had strange magic that made the people stare blankly. When we were young, his eyes which reminded me of rabbits, were now close to the color of deep rubies. Right, ruby that shines when it's in the light. Ruby's looking at me. His Highness keeps looking at you, Lady Florentia, Liliana whispered to me in surprise. My gaze, which was staring blankly in surprise at his beauty, and Perez's gaze were intertwined properly, and it didn't fall off. Perez was staring at me without moving so that the distance standing apart from the banquet hall was overshadowed. I think Impigra was explaining something. The voice sounded as distant as it was. It was a strange feeling. Why does Perez feel so alluring today? It was then when I tried to take my eyes off from Perez because I thought I should still listen to Impigra's explanation. Perez's face, which was like a work of art carved by a craftsman, began to change. The stiff eyes relaxed and gave a gentle glow as if they were about to laugh. The same was true of his tight-lipped mouth. His young, luscious lips secretly drew a smile. Wow, wow. From the side, there was a sound of admiration from Tiliana, who was probably looking at the same work of art as me, and my other senses that had been pushed away have also started working again. So, respecting each other and maintaining a mutually desirable relationship is the first step to this ball. Well, that was a good speech. Come to think of it, the other cavaliers were all good-looking too. As the head maid Impigra said, all the boys seemed to have a good demeanor and were quite impressive. In particular, the brown-haired man standing at the end of the line reminded me of Rainy. Was it because of his curly brown hair or white skin, or is it because of the big almond eyes and the smiley face? When Cranny grows up, will he look like that boy? Who are you looking at, Tia? Oh my god. Surprised by the sudden voice, Perez came right next to me. Hi, Tia. He greeted me with a slight smile. Then he took my left hand with a natural gesture. Yeah, there was no time to pull out my hand. Perez said politely, kissing the back of my hand. I am honored to be your cavalier, Miss Florentia Lombardi. End of chapter 104. Chapter 105. Perez's lips felt hot on the back of my hand. What are you doing? I said as I pulled my hand out of his grasp. Perez then replied, bending over. I heard Madame Impigra say that I was supposed to greet you like this at first. I looked around and everyone was saying hello to their cavalier. That's true. As Perez said, everyone was bowing politely to the debutante and doing the same greeting. But no one kissed the back of their back of their lady's hand like you. I know, I'm the one who's rather taken aback by Perez's very easygoing response. Did the other cavaliers skip the kissing part because they're shy? That could be it. Unlike me and Perez, they all seemed new or barely acquainted. You didn't say anything in your letter a few days ago. Why are you suddenly showing up like this? To surprise you. Are you surprised? Perez leaned slightly towards me and asked, a little. You suddenly came here and become my cavalier. How much did it was unfamiliar. It wasn't the Perez I used to know. Perez was close to what I had seen in the crowd in my previous life, who looked across the banquet hall. How much what? I am surprised. Then I succeeded. Perez smiled faintly. I've already written a letter and I was about to send it to you, but Madame Impigra came to Poirot Palace asking me to be your cavalier. It's also a great opportunity to impress the nobles. I see. Impigra was looking proudly at the young aristocrats who were having awkward conversations. She was right. Is there any other place where everyone's eyes are as focused as the Imperial Debutante Ball? It was obviously a great opportunity for Paris. But why? What is the intention of Madame Impigra? Given that she is the only one in the palace who is at odds with the Empress, I don't think she's going to take a bad turn against Perez. Perez, I never thought I'd make my debut with you. I didn't even know that. In his previous life, Perez did not enter society until he returned from the academy. He was completely forgotten to the point that there was a happening where the banquet hall gatekeeper refused Perez entry because he wasn't recognized. Then, who were you going to do it with, if not me? Perez asked me, tilting his head. With whom? Come to think of it, choosing one of my twin cousins hurts their pride for some reason. It would seem like I had no other choice but to go with a relative because I don't have anyone else to go with. Yes, since I'm doing it, I'd rather do it with you. When I said that, Perez nodded again and curled up his lips faintly. It was a very satisfied face. Well, please take care of me. It's an honor, Lady Lombardi. Perez once said, bowed politely and smiled. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Pairs of men and women moved together following the rhythm of the dance teacher brought by Impigra. The unique steps of the imperial debutante, close to waltz, were very different from the usual social dance in the empire. So I heard screams from all over the place as they were unfamiliar with it. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Oh, my foot. There were small disturbances here and there, stepping on each other's feet, regardless of whether they were men or women. Excuse me, Lady Lombardi and His Highness, happen they both be so good at this? Except for us. Paris, who grabbed my waist lightly, was even showing the ease of turning in advance so that I wouldn't bump into other people in the middle. There's nothing you can't do. This man must be a fraud. He's smart, good at studying, he does everything well even when he were young, and he's handsome. Now Paris has become a man who naturally attracts many enemies and ladies. Are you sure you're learning this dance for the first time? Maybe Madame Impigra gave him a prior education. It's my first time dancing. But why are you so skilled? Paris was much better than other children who had not officially made their social debut and had attended various kinds of banquets. Even now, everyone can take their eyes off Paris' leisurely steps. And what about Tia? Perhaps because his face was so close that his voice can be heard right by my ears. Tia is a great dancer. Me? Well, I wasn't as relaxed as Paris, but I was keeping up with it. I didn't know, but I guess I'm more of a socialite. The dance and everything else. But it was no match for Paris. At this rate, everyone will be busy watching you rather than me and debutante. Because Paris, whose black hair sways with every movement, is really handsome even to me. Even now, when I'm standing with boys of different ages, I feel like I'm seeing a peacock standing alone in a flock of chickens. Perhaps he felt a blank stare. Paris looked at me with a slight tilt of his head. It was then. Oh, I'm sorry, Lady Lombardi. A couple dancing nearby turned toward us, and the boy's shoulder slightly hit my back. Well, I didn't see it because I was so busy. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of him really struggling with dancing and apologizing while sweating a lot. It's just a little bump. I'm fine. Are you okay, Mr. Palin? He didn't think I'd know his name. The boy opened his eyes wide. Do your best, Mr. Palin. I saw you stepping on her foot a lot earlier. I want to tell you that the sterile ointment is perfect for such bruises. And I smiled with a little heart of encouragement, and the boy's reaction was a little strange. He stared blankly at me, and his face turned redder because of the dance. Just as I was about to tell him to go get some rest, I heard Paris' slightly lowered voice. I'd rather they see me. Huh? What? I'd rather people see me. What are you talking about all of a sudden? Are you confessing that you want to get more attention than me, who is the beauty? Perez was glaring somewhere instead of answering. It was the boy who bumped into me a little while ago. The boy who started practicing with his partner again, kept glancing at Perez's side with a frightened face, which of course looked precarious. Oops. He stumbled and eventually made his partner fold. Hey, Perez. I tapped him on the shoulder and Perez then looked down at me and replied, Nothing, let's practice again. Throughout practice since then, I never happened to bump into anyone. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Everyone's working hard this year. Emperor Jovanes relaxed, looking down at the banquet hall downstairs. Nevertheless, his eyes were on Florentia and Perez. The banquet hall where the practice of the debutante ball was held was a double-decker structure. The second floor was rarely used, but access was possible through the stairs outside, and the emperor and the empress came in without telling anyone and were watching everything. Until the cavaliers first appeared, Rubini was watching the practicing young children with a great deal of joy. Lombardi's girl was annoying, but she also thought she would give her an example when she became a member of society soon. But the problem was that Perez was mixed among the cavaliers. Well, what that surprised Empress Rubini looked at Jovanes and noticed at the moment the emperor already knew Perez would be a cavalier. I can't believe the reason we walked here after having a luncheon together was to observe him. All of this must have been the usual ploy of Impigra. Let's see now, old woman. Rabiner immediately stared at Impigra, and their eyes met. The maids in the hall had already noticed that the emperor and the empress were watching the practice scene. Did you expect the second prince to make that face? Emperor Jovanes leaned against the railing as if he were interested. Perez, who had always been expressionless and angry, was smiling softly at Gallian's daughter. Oh, they look pretty good together. It was a perfect match. How old is Florentia Lombardi this year, Empress? Empress Rubini did not say anything. Jovanes also murmured to himself, as if he did not expect an answer. Gallian Lombardi's daughter. The empress knew better than anyone that the abacus was running busily in the emperor's head. Jovanes was calculating what assets Perez and Florentia could get out of Gallian Lombardi if they were to have a marriage. Phew. Empress Rubini gritted her teeth quietly. Now that Perez has already been selected as cavalier, there was no way to stop him from appearing at the debutante ball, but partnering with Lombardi's young lady must be prevented. Right now, not only Emperor Jovanes, but also the social aristocrats would blubber their mouths when they start to think of Perez and Florentia together. And then he'll really start to combat Lombardi stuff, which the emperor has long since wanted. So on the day when he decides to make them marry, Perez will surely inherit the crown. Gallian Lombardi, his power is already over magnificent. At a time when Astana's marriage has yet to be decided, it was impossible to ignore the gaining power of Gallian Lombardi. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The sound of Rubini grinding her teeth again was buried by the distant count of rhythm. End of chapter 105.